Howdy Barters, it's so good to be here yet again. Still catching up on those final 2024 films that I've yet to see, and Babygirl is one that's been getting quite a lot of buzz recently. This is the story of a CEO in a major tech company in New York City who starts to have an affair with a much younger man. In fact, he's an intern that just started working at her company. I know everyone has been saying this is a super sexy and erotic film, and in many ways it is. There's quite a lot of sex in this film, so it very much falls in the category of a rated R film. But I'll be honest, more than anything, this film made me feel deeply sad. There's so much built up tension in Nicole Kidman's character, and it is almost painful to watch the release of all those built up emotions come bursting to the surface. There's something almost animalistic about the way she groans in her pleasure. And to be clear, no, I'm not kink shaming here. That is totally fine. You do you. People have different needs and all that. But by the end of the film, I get the impression that both she and Dickinson's character are just deeply sad and hurt people. What they are doing to each other may seem fun in the short term. They almost interpret it as these kid games that they're playing, but I think it is deeply unhealthy, and I think they come to that realization too. And the thing is, it's not just unhealthy to them, but also to those around them. And that is indeed the worst part. She would risk it all, not just her career, which she is at the very tippity top of her company. I mean, she is after all the CEO, and she is quite powerful in her profession. But that is not what is most important over here. She is really risking the integrity of her family. And ultimately, that was the point and the root of her excitement. There had to be something at stake here to put on the line for her to fulfill those fantasy dreams of hers. So it's not just a sexual fetish, and when I think about it, it's actually really dark. I do appreciate this drama of having one in literally every facet of your life, being the CEO of this major company, as well as being this leader among women, and also having a pretty amazing family. Which, speaking of, there's quite an interesting dynamic with one of her daughters, who's played by Essa Rose McGregor. Ewan McGregor's daughter. I did not know that going into the film, but that was a nice surprise. They really do have this interesting and nuanced mother-daughter relationship in the film that I thought was quite thought-provoking. And I also do love Antonio Banderas' performance over here. There's quite a heartfelt and heart-wrenching performance over here, and I don't think people are singing enough praise in his direction. Of course, everyone's talking about Nicole Kidman and Harris Dickinson, for good reason, mind you, but don't underestimate Antonio Banderas. I think he's quite the powerhouse in a subtle way. But indeed, there is something quite tragic about having this extreme success in your life, but that being conscious by this void that you just cannot fill at home. God, that is a bit too literal in this case. That aside, Nicole Kidman, as always, is a fantastic actress. She pretty much crushes every role that she's given. And here she gives a very nuanced and expressive performance. That tension where she's trying to hold the line, being faithful to her husband and not indulge into these pretty dark fantasies that she has, is something that is acutely felt on screen. In many ways, it was a very stressful film watching experience for me, because you can feel all these conflicting emotions just bubbling to the surface. So unsurprisingly, this is quite a powerful and nuanced performance over here, and we can already see her getting a lot of award nominations or even wins in some cases. And I will say it is interesting seeing these matured actresses getting these very daring roles lately. Look no further than Demi Moore in The Substance earlier this year. And as for her counterpart over here in the second lead role, we got Harris Dickinson, who is the ultimate naughty bad boy over here. The chemistry between them is very strong indeed, but I gotta say, I'm very disturbed by this character. He is absolutely an agent of chaos in this story. He even admits it himself at one point later in the film, which is quite a revealing moment. And he has a very strange idea around consent. There's this discussion that he and Nicole Kidman have in the film, and maybe you guys will disagree with me, but personally I felt it sounded a lot like coercion and borderline blackmail, which in some sense it's kind of the kink she was looking for. I feel super conflicted about all of this. Yeah, there's a lot of unhealthy behavior in this film, and obviously I don't want to spoil too many details, but I do feel like I need to comment on this one specific moment in the film where he visits her at her family home, meets the family. That's a bit of a red flag. And then they have another moment later on in the scene in the car, which was another gigantic red flag. Like, that should have been more than enough for her to realize that, oh shit, this cannot go on like this. But of course, it's a little too late by that time. But even if I have all these mixed emotions around his character, I'm throwing no shade on Harris Dickinson's quality as an actor, because he is quite charismatic in this film indeed. And I have to say, I do appreciate that he takes these very daring roles. He's not one to play it safe. We saw him earlier this year in Blitz, even though he had a very short screen time, though it is still cool to see him collaborate with a director like Steve McQueen. But of course, we all know him from that insane performance in Triangle of Sadness. Oh my god, he will go down in film history if for no other reason than that film on its own. So I do take my hat off for him being so adventurous in taking these challenging roles as an actor. I wonder what's going to be next for him. And as a final few points of constructive criticism, there is one quote in the film that really stood out to me. There's a discussion between Antonio Banderas and Nicole Kidman, his wife, and I'm paraphrasing over here, but he asked at one point, "Have I become irrelevant to you as a director?" Because he is the director of this theater play, and she tells him that, "Honey, we're all irrelevant, and we should pay more attention to this avalanche that's gonna come and crush us all." Because FYI, she's a CEO of this tech company that's dealing in AI and automated robotics, which is a very apropos topic in our modern era today, and it's a discussion that's gonna become only more prevalent in the near, if not immediate future. And yet I found the film kind of glosses over all these kind of topics pretty much for the rest of the film. There is an interesting moment between Harris Dickinson and Nicole Kidman when he's interviewing her and he's asking her some background questions around her. She tells him, like, "You could Google that. Why are you wasting your time in this interview?" And he has an interesting counter to that where he says, "Well, the internet is unreliable. I would much rather hear it from you." And the only other way where I could see that AI irrelevance topic being used as a metaphor in this film, so not only could we creatively, professionally, financially become irrelevant in the wake of this AI avalanche, but also it could be translated in her marital relationship where she kind of feels irrelevant, or her husband feels irrelevant sexually in the bedroom with her, which can be an interesting way of interpreting that. And it might require more critical thinking and discussion with other people around the topics of this film. But otherwise, I do find that this Pandora's box is kind of open, but not really explored at all. It's kind of paper thin. And speaking of paper thin, there's also Sophie Wilde that appears in the film, who, once again, not hating on her as an actress, she was amazing in Talk to Me, and she has a few moments here and there, but she doesn't have all that much screen time to have room to breathe, to have any real substantial meat on the bones in her performance. But one area of the film that it's impossible not to recognize its shining quality is in the very stylish visual craft of the film. The sets are intricate and beautiful. I particularly love the CEO office and all the meeting rooms that are quite a vibe. The use of glass where you could see through and in times cover the blinds on these rooms, and they're often also soundproofed as well, which creates this very secretive and claustrophobic quality about it. As you can imagine, there are some scandalous nocturnal activities that happen in these rooms, but also the view on the New York City skyline is oftentimes breathtaking. And of course, their rich family homes are quite gorgeous to look at. So yeah, in terms of the environments, there's quite a lot to look at, but I think the strongest visual aspect of this film is the costume design. Nicole Kidman looks beautiful throughout the entire film, but not only are the costumes very detailed and quite lovely to look at, I think they're most useful because they convey a lot of emotion and character development throughout the film. So that's something I super appreciated in this film. And also in terms of the soundtrack, there's one song in particular that keeps coming back in the film, and there's a very breathy quality about it. It's kind of eerie and unsettling, but it works super well. So as you may have noticed, I'm getting to this film a little bit later than most people perhaps. I did consider going on a Baby Rodu double Christmas feature that day, but unfortunately I had other plans. But yeah, what a weird and kinky Christmas day that was this year. Oh my god. What a time to be alive. And as I was buying my tickets for the film, there was only one other person that chose a seat in the cinema, and they chose at the tippity top in the corner. So I felt like, holy shit, I am not gonna look your way. No judgment whatsoever. You do you. Thankfully, we were not alone in the room. There were quite a few other people that showed up in the end, and there were quite a lot of ladies, and let me tell you, they're giggling like a bunch of schoolgirls. And throughout a lot of the sex scenes, they were all just bursting out laughing. They just couldn't hold it in, which kind of ruined the vibe a little bit, if I'm honest. That aside, I do appreciate the drama and this morally conflicting zone that our characters find themselves in. Personally, I felt super tense throughout most of the film, watching Nicole Kidman indulge in these very dark fantasies. So it is hard to translate my feelings into a score for this film, which in a way is appropriate because our characters in the film are also feeling these very conflicted emotions. So it is interesting how my feelings mirror that in a way. But I guess today I'm ranging around a 6.5 out of 10. I feel like a lot of people are reacting much more warmly to this than I am, and you know what, that's okay, to each their own, but there you go. I guess it's just not my cup of tea, or rather, this ain't my glass of milk. I'm definitely not gonna chug that in one shot. So with all that being said, wishing you and your loved ones nothing but the best. Take care and talk to you soon. If the video was a little laggy today, I apologize. Hopefully it'll go better next time. Bye now.